Corinthians 15. If Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile. If Christ is not raised, if Christ is not raised, our preaching is empty. Our worship is empty. It's just karaoke night at the lighthouse. Our sacrifices are empty. Many of you spent a lot of time this last week beautifying the place. And all that's for nothing without the resurrection. You might as well pack up and go home. But if ye be raised, then everything changes. I've attended more funerals in my life, I think, than weddings. And I don't know if that's because I got a lot of lonely friends or I got a lot of old people in my life. I don't know, one of the two. Maybe a little bit of both. But none were harder than my dad's this last year. And there are days I feel like you will never get to see my story play out. And as I talk about this, I know I'm not alone in this grief. That many of us still grieve the loss of someone we love. And for many of you that have come up to me to offer words of comfort and encouragement in this weird sort of way, telling me you don't get over it, it is kind of a comfort. It helps you brace for what's coming. Helps you set the pace. That's not a sprint. Grief. Many of us still live with the grief because for me, I was blessed. My dad didn't get hit by a train at 40 years old. My dad was 82. When my dad passed away, nobody said, oh, of what? Like, he was 82 years old. But for some of you, you've experienced loss that was unexpected, unfathomable loss that you can't even mention here today because it hurts that deep. It cut is that deep to where you can't just say, hey, pray for me. I'm dealing with this loss. And sin created that for us. And when somebody asked me months ago, are you angry? And my answer initially was no. But not to be Mr. Preacher, but as it kind of settled in more, I thought, you know what, I am angry. I'm angry that sin separates us from people we love. I'm not angry with God, never was. But I am angry at sin. And it's okay to be angry. Don't let people tell you in the grieving process, if you're crying, you're not supposed to cry. And if you're angry, you're not supposed to be mad. That's hogwash. Read your Bible. Jesus grieved. We're allowed to grieve. And all the funerals I attended, one of the things that's one of the hardest is that I never saw someone come back from a funeral. My dad visited a lot of hospitals. Between the Bay Area and Fresno, he knew every hospital real well. Now, unless you guys are, normal goers of the ambulance, Sister Patty, some of us don't know if the ambulance driver were to say, where do you want to go? You'd be like, the hospital, right? But not my dad, not my mom, right? When they asked, where are we going? They knew exactly where to go, and it wasn't the hospital closest to you. Oh, no. It was the one over the hill and through the woods to the hospital, right? Because that was the best one. And every time Dad went to the hospital, save but one time, he always came home. And so when I walked into the funeral home there in Brentwood, and I walked in and I saw my dad's body lying there, I knew he's not coming home. Because he already is. Amen. But in all the funerals I ever attended, I never saw somebody come back from one. If I did, I probably wouldn't be standing here. I'd have my own funeral. Right? I've seen weddings get crashed. My own mom can attest to her own wedding being crashed. My mom's story for another time. I wasn't there. I wouldn't know. But I've never heard of someone crashing their own funeral. Save it maybe Lazarus, right? Everyone's sad. Everyone's really down, been dead for a few days, and then out he comes, right? Looking like a mummy, terrifying everybody in sight. But there was one man in particular, he didn't even wait around for the funeral. They were still trying to put the pieces together, trying to figure out all that had just transpired in the last week. And just as they were coming to grips with the fact that this, in fact, was a finality, that he is, in fact, gone, Jesus did just as he said. And one of my problems in modern Christianity today is that I see a lot of people getting these weird debates. You see it online all the time because, Facebook is a wonderful, godly place to go and visit. And what I see oftentimes is folks trying to argue Jesus was real. Historical facts tell us that Jesus was in fact real. I don't sit around and try and debate with you if Walt Disney was real. We all know he was real. We go visit his castle every week. Spend way too much money. We know he's real. There's videos of him. There's books and documentation about Walt Disney. When we talk about Walt Disney, we don't talk about if Walt was real. We know that he was real. But for some reason, when it comes to Jesus, we want to have this debate of whether or not he is actually a real person or just some coping mechanism for us. Our main text in Matthew 28, and I promise you I'm getting there, our main text in Matthew 28 is not a biblical history lesson. It's not a coping mechanism. I want to be real with you right now. You think I go to church because I'm religious? You think I enjoy wearing this? My wife can tell you, I don't. She hears me curse the devil every morning when I put it on. I'm not here because I'm religious. I hope you're not here because you're religious. It just puts a bad taste in my mouth. You think I'm a pastor because I just enjoy theology? I do enjoy theology. I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to digging through stuff. But do you think that I stand here before you today preaching the Word of God because I enjoy theology? I pastor this church. I go to church. I preach Jesus because the resurrection of Christ is the single most important event in human history. Amen. Not some Bible story. It's not some comic book. It's not something I categorize with, cover your ears, the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. He is real. I've said this ad nauseum in this church. I love when my daughter walks around the house. It's a small world, right? It's great. But the thing that brings me life is when she sings Jesus Loves Me. Why? Because that's going to bring her life. Only thing that place is going to do is empty her pocketbook. But Jesus is going to bring her life. And that's real. Not just to me. It's not my truth. It's the truth. Forget my truth and your truth. It's all subjective. The truth is the thing we ought to be seeking. Not somebody's individual perspective, but the truth. Child of God, let that be a lesson for you next time that you want to share your faith. Because if you share your faith but avoid the resurrection of Christ, you have put your faith in the wrong things. Why do you go to that church? Why do you believe in God? Why are you a Baptist? If your answer to any of those things does not include Jesus and Him crucified, risen, and coming again, you put your faith in the wrong things. Right. Because if our answer is, well, I don't know, this is where my parents have gone my whole life, and I just kind of show up. My wife drags me there, and I just go, and so she to avoid a fight. That's our faith. My faith is in stability. And I have seen so many parents bring their kids, because they put their faith in stability. They bring their kids to church, they drag them here, drug them here, right? Talked about the drug babies in church. They drug all their kids to church. They bring them into church, and they sit them down because they put their faith in stability. And then guess what? The kid gets older, and they're crazy. Why? Because they want anything but stability. They want instability. They want things to erupt. And immediately we're like, what did I do wrong? I did all the right things. I got up, I yelled and screamed at them to get in the car because we're going to be late. And got in the car, and then their hair wasn't done, and they didn't brush their teeth. And so then we said all the four-letter words on the way to church, prayed and repented before we left. What did I do wrong? And I'm sitting here and I'm telling you, you put your faith in the wrong thing. Why am I here? Because it's Sunday and I don't know what else to do? Because the answer to that question, He is risen, that's not just the answer for today. That's the answer for next week. It was the answer last week. And it's the answer for any time that we gather. We are here because He is alive. Right. Since you have become a part of the church, if you promoted yourself to gatekeeper, oh, I wanted to. So I've been begging the Lord to let's put together a sermon series on gatekeeping. And the Lord won't let me. But if you have promoted yourself to gatekeeper, where you get to stand out there and decide who comes in and who goes out, it's time to get self-demoted and re-examine what God's purpose is in your life. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it is not deciding who gets to come in and who gets to go out. That's His job. Jesus isn't broken. He isn't broken. But I'm going to tell you right now, people sure are. And those people, we often talk about the broken. We always talk about the people that come in and they visit. But some of you that come here on a weekly basis are broken. And then you got broken people trying to help heal broken people. And man, it don't work out too well, does it? Be like your doctor walking into your doctor's office and you're sicker than a dog, and he comes in and goes, oh, what can I do? What can I do for you? And you're like, I don't know, but it sounds like you need help. And that's for a lot of us. We come in with bitter and jaded attitudes. We come in hateful. We come in despite. We come in with whatever attitude that the devil wanted us to wear. Do you need Jesus? And it's like, no, but it sounds like you do, right? Broken people need people who have found healing to lead them to the healing. But if we aren't healed ourselves, we are doing no one any favors. Matthew chapter 28. Matthew chapter 28, beginning in verse number 1. After the Sabbath, toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. That's a shame, right? When you're just there's so many Marys out there, you're just the other Mary, right? How would you like that, Sister Vicky? You're just the other Vicky. Like, that's brutal. My mom grew up, she didn't grow up, I grew up in the Oakley Church, where she was Joyce, and then there was a Rejoice, and then there was again I say Rejoice. So I don't know. But anyway, back to this. My ADD kicked in. My bad. Verse number 2. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. I think he's just showing off, right? I just did that. How many of you ever done that? I've done that. Moved a boulder, right? You're like, I just did that. So you sit on the boulder. You're like, this is mine. Right? If you're judging me, you've never done it. Try it sometime. It's quite a good feeling. But his appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. And for fear of him, the guards trembled and became like dead men. They passed out. You ever been so scared you passed out like one of them teenagers on one of them crazy roller coaster rides? That's kind of how I visit these guards. Out. But the angel said to the woman, remember Mary and the other Mary, do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. He is not here, for he is risen. Amen. As he said. I mean, some translations put the word just in there, which I love. Just as he said. As if just to kind of dig it a little bit more in there. Don't you remember? He kind of mentioned this, I don't know, a few days ago. Come, see the place where he lay. You don't believe me? Walk on inside. Guess what? There's plenty of square footage in here because it's empty. Then go quickly and let his disciples, and he has and tell his disciples, that he has risen from the dead. And behold, he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him. See, I have told you. And so they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to tell the disciples. And behold, Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." Oh, okay. And they came up and took hold of his feet. I picture that. We always sing a song about "Look for me at Jesus' feet." I think of this verse. To put it in the way too modern translation, Jesus walks in and goes, "What's up, you guys?" And immediately they fall on their face. Don't even look at him. Bowed on their face. And grabbed hold of his feet and they worshipped him. And Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me." You don't need to argue about whether or not Jesus existed. History tells us that. Just like Walt Disney existed. He was born in, I believe it was in December of 1901. Passed away in December of 1966 of lung cancer. We know this. It's documented. You can go see his gravesite right here in the area. For my baseball fans, George Herman Babe Ruth, a man who was alive when my dad was alive, which just makes me feel wow, right? Born in 1895, died in 1948 of throat cancer. Big man, man's man. The Yankees would call him a good man, a good ball player, a good American. That's what his plaque says at Yankee Stadium. Some women might say otherwise in the 1930s and 40s, but it's documented. I don't have to debate whether or not it's real. He has stats that are listed in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was a part of the inaugural class of the first class of, that's what inaugural means, the first class of the Hall of Fame. Sometimes I have to explain big words that I say out loud. Sorry. But Jesus lived. And he died. That's not debatable. Where we get hung up on is the resurrection. It's not him we reject. It's what he did. It's what we did that we have a really hard time grasping. Why? Because if he got up, then he's Lord. You understand that if he rose himself from the grave, that gives him the greatest authority in human history. And now you need to answer to that. And everything that he preached prior, and everything that he's going to say before he ascends, you have to listen to. And you need to listen to, because he's claimed that he's the Son of the Most High God. He claims that he's the way, the truth, and the life, and that no man can get into heaven but through him. And he told Nicodemus that you must be born again. These were all words that he said that we can just dismiss as some crazy hippie from Nazareth until the moment that he rose from the grave. And then suddenly now these words are words of eternal life. These words are words that you and I need to listen to and live by. So for centuries after this, humanity has tried to explain it away. Thanks to rationalism in the 19th century, we got some really great things like, well, he didn't really die, he went into a coma. And he passed out, and then he was in the grave, and while he was in the grave, he woke up from the coma, moved the stone away, after he had been beaten to death. And he moved the stone away all by himself, and he got up, and then slowly after that, he died, and then they hit his body. Which brings me to the other thing, that the disciples, in fact, stole his body. Now, I have doubted that that's in the Bible. And we'll get to that later. I'm getting ahead of myself. But witnesses, another one in the 19th century that we heard, was that the 500 witnesses. That's the part we don't like to talk about. We talk about Jesus rose from the grave and 5 people heard about it, and then he rose and everyone's like, where'd Jesus go? I don't know. 500 people witnessed this man's resurrection and ascension. 500 people. So in the 19th century, they all hallucinated. Historians like Josephus, historians like Tacitus, Clement of Rome, the Talmud, all talk about having witnessed or knowing one of the 500 who witnessed the bodily resurrection of Jesus. Don't sit here and tell me it takes too much faith to believe that Jesus rose from the dead, when it is documented after documentation after documentation that it is a historical fact. Jesus died, he was buried, and 3 days later he rose again. On the day of preparation, the Gospels, all 4 Gospels, record that on the day of preparation, Zachology was a Friday, that he was then buried, died that afternoon, was dead Friday evening, Saturday morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning, he rises again. In the grave 3 days, and in the Jewish custom, when someone says 3 days doesn't necessarily mean 72 hours exactly. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. You want to bury him on Wednesday, that's fine. But my point is there is documentation after documentation that this man died the day before the Sabbath, which would have been a Friday. And if you want to put an extra Sabbath in there, that's fine. But what I'm here to tell you is that there is document proof that he died. There are 2 places in Jerusalem where many believe he was buried. But unfortunately, the one thing we can't prove and say, see, there he is that he resurrected. But I can tell you this. I may not be able to show you a picture of Jesus having a selfie in heaven, but I can tell you right now, I know he lives because he lives in me. Amen. I can thumb through this Bible and I can quote you 100 scriptures, but if you don't believe in this book, what's that to you? I'm just boring you at this point. I'm not here to fill your head with theology. I'm here to tell you that Jesus came, died, rose again, and he changed my life because I accepted the price he paid at Calvary. Amen. You want to chalk that up as religion? That's fine. But I'm here to tell you that that relationship with Christ changed my life. And every hole and every pocket of your life, that loneliness, that feeling that you're not completely answering the calling of your life, that you feel like that there's something missing in your identity, I'm here to tell you, if you don't have Jesus, there's your answer. The strongest evidence for the resurrection did not come from his followers. I love this. It did not come from his followers. Because if we relied strictly on the word of his followers, well, guess what? Your followers are going to lie for you. Right? Let's just face facts. And this is played out throughout religion. Followers of Muhammad lied for Muhammad. Again, historical fact. And so it would make sense that here they are, the fearful Jewish followers of Jesus, are like, all right, well, we got to come up with a story now. Now he's died. Now what do we do? So I can understand saying, well, it's a little weird to put all of your faith, all of your eggs, no pun intended, Easter Sunday, all of your eggs in one basket to say that you're going to only listen to his followers. But see, the greatest evidence of the resurrection did not come from his followers, but from his enemies. In Matthew 28, continuing there in verse number 11. What in the world? I didn't know my camera's up there. Oh my goodness gracious, how scary. While they were going, behold, some of the guard went into the city and told the chief priests all that had taken place. It's early Sunday morning. It's still dark. For the Jews, the day didn't start, like ours starts at midnight for some reason in the middle of the night. I've never understood why we do that. For the Jews, the day actually started at the evening. So last night, at sunset, that's the beginning of Sunday for the Jews. Right now, you're toward the end of the day of Sunday on the Jewish calendar. But they got up so early in the morning that it's still dark. Two groups are moving through Jerusalem. One group, the women, They're running with the truth to reveal it. The other group, the guards, they're running with the truth too. But about how to help to conceal it. Same facts, different motives. They both know he resurrected. They both know he's not dead. One group's going to go tell the world. The other group's going to go tell how they can spin it. You can have facts, church, and still be wrong. I know we pride ourselves on Baptists, we got the truth. But we can have all the facts and still be wrong. Your motive to be right can make you wrong. Some husbands in here, maybe wives, I don't know that from personal experience, but some husbands in here maybe can be, or maybe I'm alone on this hill and you can just do a subtle nod of the head or blink twice and let me know that you agree. But sometimes we can be right, but because our attitude to brag about how right we are, because we're sore winners, makes us wrong. Sometimes you just got to take one for the team, do a little dance with yourself, don't tell nobody. Sometimes when you throw it in the face, you're immediately wrong. You can be right in information and wrong in spirit. We see this in marriages, families, and we see it in churches. We come into a business meeting with the spirit of being right instead of a spirit of unity, we're going to have a rough meeting. People use truth to wound instead of heal. That's why there's a lot of people that here today that are, man, this church thing ain't for me. Why? Well, maybe it's boring. I get that. Got to listen to me for a while. That sucks. But for some of us, we've been through church hurt. Facts with the wrong heart produces destruction. You're playing gatekeeper. And just like the Roman guards trying to conceal instead of reveal the reality of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, we are guilty of it all the same. And so the response of the religious leaders is quite daunting. They hear the truth. Guards get to them. They hear the truth. So the tomb is empty. And we were there the whole night. Nobody came in, nobody came out. The stone was rolled away, and then like this supernatural thing happens, like lightning and strange, and this dude sitting on a rock, and he's just sitting there, and he's like, "Fear not." And like I was so scared. Phil over here passed out. It was kind of funny. But then I passed out too, so I don't talk about that. So in verse 12 he says, "And when they had assembled with the elders and taken counsel, they gave a sufficient sum of money to the soldiers and said, 'Tell people,'" wait a minute, "'if it's the truth, why do we got to tell somebody something different? Tell people his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble.'" Why would they say that? Because if a guard was caught sleeping, they were murdered. There was no, less than honorable discharge. You were just killed. And so, with a nice little sum of money, the elders said, the chief priests, you think, what is that? Let's just, for lack of a better term, the pastors of Israel, all stood around and said, "You know what? Take this money, and you tell them that the disciples came and stole them away." The religious leaders of that day. Instead of repenting, they make a decision. Suppress the truth, create a false narrative, and then fund the lie. They pay the soldiers, and the story already doesn't make any sense. Roman soldiers can't sleep on duty or they'd be executed. On top of that, the disciples suddenly got brave. This whole scenario, they've been scared out of their minds, scattered, hiding. Now all of a sudden they're bold and they're going to take on the Roman government themselves. They're going to go in there and we're going to knock these guys out and we're going to move the stone and we're going to take his body out. Revolution, right? Where did we see this? Where did we see this from the disciples? Never. They're too afraid to fight. If they had the body, they would have produced it. Right? Because if they had the body, if the elders had the body, they'd say, hey, here's his body right here. We found it. And if the disciples had his body, they'd just find his disciples and they'd say, hand over the body. They'd produce a body. And if they would have done that, Christianity would have died instantly. They couldn't produce a body because there was no body. Not a dead one. These men obviously believed what the soldiers told them. That's the scary thing. Everybody in this story so far, all is aware that Jesus is risen. We don't find anywhere in this gospel or any of the other three where the elders go, I don't believe that for a second. His own disciples didn't believe that he was risen. But the elders knew. Oh, yeah, he did rise. Yeah. The prophets mentioned that part, didn't they? Yeah, they did. And rather than repent, they told more lies. These men knew he was the Son of God. They saw it all happen. They saw the miracles. They saw the darkness. Think about all that happened at the cross. He cries out, it is finished! And he gives up the ghost. And then there's darkness falls over the land in the middle of the day. Darkness falls over the land. An earthquake happens. And where are the elders at? They're at the temple. That seems like a safe place to be. I don't know, until it gets broken in half and the veil gets torn. This sacred place. Now destroyed. Just as he said. So they're terrified. They know what's happened. But they knew if they admitted it, they'd lose their status. They'd lose their authority. They'd lose their control. And we have people in Washington that are dealing with the same thing right now. I'm not going to say this from the pulpit. I'm going to say this over here. You should never have a political leader cussing out other political leaders on Easter Sunday, and then you try and claim to me that he's a man of God. He needs Jesus. And that's the reality of it. If you're not praying for him and you're just wearing his hat, you're missing the picture. We need to pray for him. Because that's the reality that we're in. We got folks today that do not believe he is risen. They believe it as this nice story of hope and comfort. As another former president posted today. For all those that celebrate Easter, may today be a great day of hope and comfort. It's not just those that are celebrating Easter. Even if you're not celebrating Easter, guess what? Today is still a great day of hope. Because he is alive. And he didn't just die for those who believed. He died even for those who didn't. It's the greatest day in human history. God gave them one last chance, though. They got to the truth before the disciples did. And God handed them the evidence and gave them an opportunity to repent. And instead of humility, they chose pride. Instead of surrender, they chose control. What do you do when the truth comes to you? When the word says forgive, do you obey or do you justify your bitterness? When the word says to live holy, do you obey or do you create your own version of what holy is? When the word says love, do you obey or do you explain why you shouldn't love? And you don't understand that. That's not. God had an exception for this person. We too often get comfortable in a lie. But because the intent was true, we fail to own the hurt that we've caused. The enemy suppresses truth, plants lies, appeals to your own desires by saying things like, do this and you'll get that. And it's easier for people to believe lies than to just accept truth. We consume lies like water and reject truth like poison. Reminds me of my daughter. She'll drink juice, no problem, but you put Tylenol in that juice, she's going to spit it out. And that's how some of us are with the truth. It's good for you. It's going to help you. Even if it tastes bad at first, the truth is what sets you free. Matthew 28:15 says, so they took the money, and they did as they were directed. And here's where I know that lie continues, because it says it right here in Matthew 28:15. And this story has been spread among the Jews to this day. And you guess what? When I visited Israel, we talked to some of the Jews, and guess what they said? Oh, he didn't resurrect. His followers stole his body. It sent chills up my back, because it's written right there. Matthew says that a lie spreads for decades, but here's what also spread: the testimony of the women, the testimony of the disciples, the testimony of the 500 witnesses, even the testimony of his enemies. Because now I stand up here not preaching about the 500, not preaching about the women or the disciples. I'm preaching to you about the testimony of his enemies. He's alive! What do we do now? What a testimony. The church exploded and still exists today because the truth cannot be buried. The truth always comes out. In closing, our favorite point: the world is spending money, energy, platforms to spread lies. The question is, what will the church do? We at Lighthouse, we must love, we must grow, we must give, we must obey. We have to do these things. Not because God needs us, but the world needs the truth. This is not to be a place to spread fear and hatred. This is a place to spread, not a place to spread religious dogma. We are created to spread the gospel. Jesus came, Jesus lived, Jesus died, Jesus was buried, He rose, and more importantly, guys, Jesus is coming again. When we fail to do this, we cease to exist. Churches shutter their doors, and I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again to wake you up. Because churches shutter their doors, not because they fell out of the times or because they're in a neighborhood full of sin. No, that's called a mission field. Churches close their doors because they quit talking about Jesus. And the moment that happens, we can rest assured, trouble is coming. We can meet every week, but if we fail to live like Christ, we no longer deserve to carry the name church, especially the Lord's church. The question is not, did he rise? The question is, what are you going to do about the fact that he did? Get over this fact, well, I don't know if, and all this doesn't really make sense. It takes less faith to believe this stuff, guys, than what your science books are telling you. The women saw him and ran with truth. The guards saw him and got paid to hide truth. The religious leaders saw the evidence and chose to control over surrender. You cannot be neutral. One thing is sure. You cannot be neutral about the resurrection. If he stayed in the grave, live however you want. Right? I mean, if he died. I mean, I don't mean to put other people's faith down, but I can go to Joseph Smith's grave. I'm assuming in Utah. If it's not, that's kind of crazy. But I can go to his grave. I can go to Muhammad's grave, Buddha's grave, Confucius's grave. They all have graves, and there's bodies, tombs, right inside them, where they lay, dead. Jesus lives. You cannot be neutral about this. Because he arose, if he rose from the grave, why are you still buried in sin? Why are you still buried in selfishness? Why are you still buried in your own self-centeredness? The tomb is empty. So our lives should be filled with him. I'm going to ask an impromptu invitation because